that how do we combat magic? The final point. Once we know somebody has sihr done on him, and we've verified this, how do we combat it? Remember that you are reaching out to another world, and that is the world of the jinn. And you do not have the physical strength to combat the jinn. You only have one power, and that is La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allah has the power over the jinn. So the only way to combat sihr is to reach out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that's a different world. And Allah can nullify the sihr like He did to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the power of the Quran is the most effective in eliminating the jinn. The jinns literally burn when they hear the Quran. Literally, they burn. And so, the number one way to combat sihr is through the Quran. And especially the surahs that the Prophet ﷺ told us are extra special. Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, the entire Surah Al-Baqarah, our Prophet ﷺ linked it to combating sihr. Falaq and Nas, right? All of these are especially powerful in combating sihr, and continuous recitation. You don't need to go to a specialist, a raqi we call them. You don't need to go to a specialist, but it is advisable to, for one simple reason, and that is that you are not knowledgeable of how to do these things. And it's better to go to a specialist to do that. And when you go to a specialist, make sure that the specialist you go to is of correct theology. Because most of the people involved in combating magic are themselves magicians. Most of the people involved in combating magic, most, not a minority, most of them, in that when you go to them and you pay them the money, they will contact other jinns to kick the first jinns out. Now, what's the problem with that? The other one takes over, right? And there might even be a war going on between, literally there's a mafia out there, there's turf wars going on. And the body of the person becomes, and I mean, I am telling you, I have dealt with multiple cases, that the sihr I'm dealing with is actually the second level and not the first level. That the person that I'm reading over is actually affected by the guy they went to help him. And it actually backfired, and I have to deal with this case along with the first case, right? Never, ever, ever fight magic with magic, because it'll only get you more magic, more sihr. How do you know that the guy you're going to is a magician? Very simple, very simple. What is he asking you to do, and what is he demanding of you? Now, by the way, money is not a criterion, because even righteous people might ask you money. Because at the end of the day, your Quran teacher, I mean, doesn't the Quran teacher need to get paid? Right? So asking money in and of itself is not a sin. And the Quran teacher has the right to say, I want $30 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 a month. He has the right to say that. So a legitimate raqi can also say, look, I'm going to charge you this much per session. That's no indication whether he's right or wrong, right? What is an indication? What is he doing and what is he asking you to do? That's the indication. What is he doing? If he is doing something that is mumbo jumbo, bizarre, weird, superstitious, you know, telling you to sacrifice a chicken and take the blood, okay? And this is very common, right? Telling you to take anything that sounds, this is pagan. This is go bury something in the middle of the night, right? If the magician asks you for an item of clothing, or, sorry, not the magician, the one who's combating the magician. If he asks you for an item of clothing or hair or whatnot, and this is another sign, if he asks you for your mother's name or the mother's name of the one that you're treating, know that the person you're talking to is a magician. Doesn't matter how long the beard and how big the belly. Doesn't matter. Because the only person who asks, look, you come to me and I'm treating sihr, it doesn't matter to me what your father and mother's name is. How is that relevant to me? There's a case, right? Just like the doctor when you go to, your mother's name is not going to help the doctor cure you. Correct? It's nothing to do with it, right? So why do the jinns ask? Why do the jinns ask? Because in the world of the jinn, they need to know your mother's name. Because Allah says, call them by their fathers. And the shayateen want to disobey Allah, so they will call them by their mothers. Allah says, "Ud'uhum li'aba'ihim." This is in the Quran. And the shayateen want to do everything opposite. We eat by the right, they'll eat with the left. We do this, they'll do that. So anyone who asks you, what is the name of the mother of the person? Anyone who asks you for clothing, for hair, anyone who, without examining the patient or asking about the patient, tells you the status of the patient. And this is very common as well. You go to the Maulvi Sahab, the Pir Sahab back home, and you pay him the money and say, my cousin, tell me, is he afflicted or not? And he does his mumbo jumbo, closes his eyes, and he goes, oh, yes, I will tell you there's sihr done on him. How did this man know, sitting in Timbuktu? How does he know of your cousin here in Memphis? Now, unless he says, tell me about his symptoms, that's a different story. You can come to me, and even then, and those of you that have come, they know, and by the way, I don't do this too often, I've tried my best to, but you can come to me and I'll say, bring the patient to me. I will never pronounce a judgment just secondhand. Even you doctors, do you pronounce a judgment secondhand? What do you say? Bring me the patient, let me see the result, let me do the tests on him. Correct? Right? Anybody who, without examining the patient, simply by knowing his mother's name, simply by getting some clothing item, says he's doing an analysis on this person, know that this person is also contacting the jinn. 110%, without any doubt about it. And I said it doesn't matter, I'm making fun of the beard and whatnot, I mean, in the sense that because there's an aura of religiosity. He might even be the sheikh of a masjid. He might even have it doesn't matter. Because there has to be a perception of righteousness to get his business customers, right? Anybody who's asking you for clothing item or for the name of the mother or asking you to do something paganistic, that person is a magician. It doesn't matter what facade he has painted. It's impossible that a person who is a mu'min will ask you about the name of the mother unless they're calling out the jinn themselves. Okay? So, how do you know it's legitimate? If he asks you to read more Quran, to pray often, to do dhikr, to give the adhan, to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to pray tahajjud, to follow the sunnah. In other words, standard stuff. If the only thing he's doing is reading Quran and the adhkar, then you know this person is legit. And that's the main criterion of separating the righteous from those who are not righteous. And again, so much more can be said, but quickly, some of the things are okay to do, inshaAllah ta'ala, not a problem. So to write the Quran, and it has to be Quran, and put it in water to drink, not a problem, inshaAllah ta'ala. To blow the Quran onto something and give it to you, again, if it's the Quran, not a problem as well. Even to write Quran, as long as it is Quran, and put it on the body, but you have to read it, make sure it is entirely Quran. Otherwise, and with this we have to conclude, I'm sorry, but it's getting late. Anytime somebody gives you a paper or an item that has symbols, boxes and squares, weird garbage here and there, squiggles and lines and whatnot, right? Numbers. So you have grids with numbers is the most common. Anytime somebody's doing this, this person is not following the Quran and Sunnah. This is numerology, and this is a method of communicating with the jinn. To have numbers and to have boxes and squares and pentagons and whatnot, and in each one. Now, these types of papers are typically surrounded by a little bit of Allah and His Messenger here and there. So it'll say, Alif Lam Mim, Ham Mim, Ain Sin Qaf, Bismillah. But then in the box is nothing but numbers, right? It might even say that some type of Quranic stuff is there. But if you mix Tawheed and Shirk, what's the net result? Shirk. So don't be confused if there's one ayah or one name of Allah, just because it has Allah's name. SubhanAllah, even the mushrikun believed in Allah. Doesn't mean anything. All of it has to be Quranic or adhkar. Then we say it's permissible. But if there's weird stuff that you don't understand, languages you don't understand, scripts and symbol, you don't understand, numbers, boxes, grids, all of this is communicating with the shayateen, and it's not a part of our religion of Islam. To conclude this point is that magic in reality is not something to be terrified of any more than you would be terrified of a natural calamity or cause. And magicians are evil people who have quite literally sold themselves to the shayateen, and in return the shayateen do their tricks and favors for them, and the only way to combat them is to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more religious and righteous you are, the less the impact the sihr will have on you when it is done. But even the most righteous man or woman can be afflicted with sihr, and the only cure to sihr is extra religiosity and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the easiest way, which we did not get into at all, is to get to the item of sihr and to destroy it so that the effects of sihr are lifted up. But that's typically not the most common way because it's difficult to get to the item. But if you're able to, then this is the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you don't need to get to the item because our Prophet ﷺ was cured simply by falaq and nas. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who are protected from sihr, whom the shayateen do not harm. We ask Allah's protection, we seek Allah's protection from the evil of those who blow onto knots and from the evil of the jinn and the shayateen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always protect us and our families and our loved ones from all evil in this world.